Hollywood made a movie that lost $100 million and then gave itself an Oscar for it. These 10 films flopped so hard they couldn't even pay for the after-party. Cameron Crowe spent years as a teenage reporter for Rolling Stone in the 1970s. He was traveling with rock bands and living that whole groupie-filled tour bus life. In 2000, he decided to make a movie about it. Almost Famous follows a fictional band on tour, and it's basically Crowe's love letter to that era. Roger Ebert called it one of the best films of the year. Critics loved it. Today, it's a cult classic, but when it came out, it lost money. Made $47 million against a $60 million budget. Crowe went over budget during production and took way longer than DreamWorks had expected. The studio got pissed at him, and by the time the movie was finished, they didn't want to spend more money marketing it. So they just didn't. They released a movie they'd spent $60 million making and barely promoted it. And of course it flopped, because the studio was mad at the director and basically sabotaged their own release. But the Academy didn't care about the box office. Crowe won Best Original Screenplay, and Kate Hudson and Frances McDormand were both nominated for Best Supporting Actress. Citizen Kane came out in 1941, and it's now considered one of the greatest films ever made. The story follows a journalist investigating the death of a newspaper mogul named Charles Foster Kane. Problem was, Kane looked way too much like William Randolph Hearst, you know, the actual newspaper publisher and politician. Critics thought the film was an unfair attack on Hearst, and Hearst definitely thought it was an attack on him personally. So Hearst banned all promotion of Citizen Kane in every newspaper he owned. And he owned a lot of newspapers. No ads, no reviews, just erased it from his publications completely. The movie lost over $160,000, which in 1941 was a massive loss. One powerful guy got offended and killed the film's box office by controlling the media. Sounds like a story straight from 2026, right? But that same year at the Academy Awards, Orson Welles and Herman Mankiewicz won Best Original Screenplay. The movie got nominated in 8 other categories too, including Best Picture. Susanna Kaysen wrote a memoir about being admitted to a mental institution when she was 18. She tried to take her own life, got sent to McLean Hospital in Boston, and spent 2 years there. The book dealt with sexual trauma and mental illness in women at a time when nobody wanted to talk about those things. The book was groundbreaking. The movie adaptation in 1999, not so much. It made $48 million worldwide, but only $28 million domestically against a $40 million budget. Susanna herself hated it. She went after director James Mangold for butchering her life story. The one thing everyone agreed on was Angelina Jolie. Her performance was incredible. She won Best Supporting Actress at the Oscars, and that was the only nomination the film got. Martin Scorsese decided to make a 3D family film in 2011. Hugo tells the story of an orphaned boy living in the walls of a Paris train station in the 1930s, trying to fix a broken automaton and find a home. Critics absolutely loved it. The Academy gave it 11 nominations and it won 5 Oscars. But it cost somewhere around $170 million to make, and it only made $186 million at the box office. When you factor in marketing costs, it lost a lot of money. The problem was the release date. Paramount dropped it on Thanksgiving weekend right when The Muppets, Twilight Breaking Dawn, and Happy Feet 2 all came out. Families had options, and Scorsese's expensive period piece about a French orphan wasn't the obvious choice. Noah Baumbach made a film about a modern divorce and custody battle. Scarlett Johansson and Adam Driver play a couple tearing each other apart over their kid. The performances are devastating. It's not a good time watching this movie. Netflix distributed it, gave it a limited theatrical release, then put it on streaming a month later. It made $2 million in theaters against an $18 million budget. But of course, we all know that number's basically meaningless. Netflix doesn't care about theatrical box office. They wanted the prestige of a theatrical release so it could qualify for awards, but the real audience was always going to be on the streaming service. And we don't even know how many people watched it there because Netflix doesn't always release those numbers. The film got 6 Oscar nominations, including Best Picture, Best Actor, Best Actress, and Best Original Screenplay. Laura Dern won Best Supporting Actress. Steven Spielberg decided to remake West Side Story in 2021. And I mean, it's Spielberg. The guy knows what he's doing. Critics loved it when they saw it. The plan was to release it earlier, but COVID delayed everything. So it finally came out December 10th, 2021, and then 8 days later, Spider-Man: No Way Home hit theaters. West Side Story made $76 million worldwide against a $100 million budget. That's a $24 million loss, not even counting marketing. Spider-Man made almost $2 billion in the same window. It wasn't even a competition. But the Academy didn't care about the box office. The film got 7 Oscar nominations, including Best Picture and Best Director for Spielberg. That's a pretty good consolation prize. And Ariana DeBose won Best Supporting Actress. "35 years after the original Blade Runner came out and became a cult classic, they finally made a sequel with Ryan Gosling and Harrison Ford. Critics went crazy for it. Still sits at 88% on Rotten Tomatoes almost 10 years later. The original Blade Runner flopped when it came out in 1982, despite becoming one of the most influential sci-fi films ever made. So there was some history here with Blade Runner movies not making money. Blade Runner sequel cost around $185 million to make. It made $92 million domestically. Worldwide, it got to $276 million, which sounds okay until you remember the budget and the marketing costs. The studio lost money. But it won 2 Oscars, Best Cinematography and Best Visual Effects out of 5 nominations. So the sequel to a movie that flopped and also won Oscars. History repeated itself perfectly. This one is about a hearing daughter growing up with deaf parents. Small indie film, cost $10 million to make. It played at Sundance and won both the Grand Jury Prize and the Audience Award. Then Apple showed up and paid $25 million for the worldwide streaming rights. They put the movie on their streaming service and barely released it in theaters. It made $2.2 million in ticket sales, and then they spent another $10 million just on the awards campaign. So Apple's total investment was probably north of $35 million for a film that most people watched for free with their iPhone subscription. And it won Best Picture. It actually became the first streaming film to ever win Best Picture, something Netflix has been trying to do since 2019 with 9 nominations and 0 wins. The Wolfman was a disaster from the start. They changed directors, changed composers, did extensive reshoots. The budget ballooned to $150 million. When it came out, pretty much everyone hated it. It made $142 million worldwide, lost about $11 million after accounting for the budget, and that's before marketing costs. Universal Studios figured this was going to go down as one of their biggest failures of the century. Then Oscar nominations came out and The Wolfman was nominated for Best Makeup. It was up against Barney's version and The Way Back, and it won. One Oscar doesn't make it a good movie, but at least they could put Oscar winning on the Blu-ray cover even if nobody bought it.